listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Hey.
Hi.
So we have another interview with a normal person.
I love when we do this.
I do too.
I've never gotten sick of it. I never will.
No.
Actually, I make no promises, but I just love it. It's so fun.
It's fun, and it gives you such a realistic perspective on what life is really like when it's not coming in clean, tweetable snippets from experts, but it's just someone's messy journey.
In neat, tweetable snippets, even though I'm a quote-unquote expert.
That's true.
On one thing.
That's true. But
anyway,
you get to see all the messy parts of life coming together. So I was so excited to talk to this client of mine this week, Terece, because she was pretty recently, as in 2016, and we get into this, was at the place where so many people are, where they might have achieved a lot of things that they thought they wanted, and they're wondering, why am I not happy? And she was very miserable, like on the brink of depression and anxiety. And in 2 years later, she was saying she doesn't even recognize that person. So we talked a lot about that. So before we get into the whole conversation, do you want to read her bio so they get a better sense of who Terece is?
Sure. And Terece is long-winded the way I'm long-winded.
The same way. We're kindred spirits in that way.
Yeah, no, I can't. That's not a diss to Terece. I mean, unless it's also a diss to myself. I appreciate people who have a lot to say. So, my name is Terece Hahn. Professionally, I'm an advanced registered nurse practitioner, and I hold a Doctor of Nurse Practice diploma. I am at the highest level of my education in my profession, and I achieved this about as early as a person can achieve this level of education. Making 6 figures as a new graduate, married to an amazing man, being able to travel and afford things that I've always wanted should have meant happiness and success. Emphasis on should. I was the person that had it all and was miserable. I knew there was more to life than this, but didn't know how to get there. I'd been banking that once I started my new career, making the money I did, that I'd be happy. Jumped to the desperate Google search of, what do I want to be when I grow up? Which led me to Passion Profile Quiz, then to Clarity on Fire and one-on-one coaching with Kristen, where I rediscovered who I was, what my values are, and why the hell I was so miserable. I'm a normal person who, without the help of Kristen and Rachel's business and podcast, I haven't read this before, so I'm just like, aw. I would have had to dredge for many years to accomplish the self-confidence, love, and belief in myself that I didn't even know existed. My journey is in the beginning stages of its existence, but you can't unlearn what you've learned. There's no going back. It's like a small fire was lit, and with every day that I cultivate it, with self-care, naps, being kind to myself, and understanding my values, I'm able to slowly stoke that fire to burn more brightly every day.
Isn't that great?
That is really great.
She shared the quick synopsis of her journey in that. And so we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how did she possibly go from completely miserable, even though her life seemed
perfect
great on the outside,
yeah,
to really loving herself and loving her life from the journey was from the inside out. She had been going outside and hoping that it would go inward. And
which is what everyone's trying to do.
And it didn't work.
Yeah.
So the journey that she shares with us in this podcast is the inner journey, so that the outer stuff just fell into place so much easier.
And before we let you listen to that, I want to answer a question no one's actually asked, but that I would be thinking if I was listening, which is, do you guys ever interview normal people who you haven't worked with? And the answer so far is no. And it's not that I'm not open to it. It's that we know so many cool people.
And we hear so many fascinating stories.
And it's just that after you've worked with someone for 3 months or more, or sometimes not even that long, but you've known them for months and years and you've been communicating with them, you have this intimacy with them where you know what their struggle was and you know how they've overcome it, and you can ask them the questions that the type of people who are listening are really going to want to know the answer to. And so it's not that you can't do that with people you don't know. It's that I think there's a richness of doing it with people that you do know and whose journey you've helped witness. And it's sort of nice that, Terece wrote about us in her bio, but that's not something we're asking her to do. Anyway, so the answer to that is, hey, if we find a normal person I really want to talk to who I've never coached or Kristen's never worked with or anything, I'm fine with that. But as for now, I've got so many cool people that we just really want to talk to.
And so many journeys that I know so many other people will relate to.
Yeah.
That I want to share stories of people who I know are going through and have gone through what many of you are going through. And we've got a plethora of that already.
There's just so much more when you've talked to someone that long.
Yep.
Anyway, so enjoy, and we'll be back at the end.
Hey, Terece.
Hi.
Hey, I am so excited to interview you for the podcast today because I know that for the past, maybe couple of years, you've been on quite a journey. And
yes.
That has definitely meant some external changes with your job and other things. But I personally think more importantly, you've been on a really intense inner journey of, increasing your confidence and starting to let go of people pleasing and just generally liking yourself more and feeling more directed.
Right.
And I want to get into all of that.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So I want to rewind a bit, and I want to go back to, I don't know, you can decide how far back you want to go, but at least a couple of years ago. And I want to know where your self-confidence was at then. That could be at work or in relationships or just all of it, life in general. And then we'll start to see what's changed. So let's first paint a picture of where you were a few years ago.
Okay. So the big year for me was 2016. So like any, super motivated woman, I decided to complete my doctorate, get married, take my boards, and find my first nurse practitioning job. So as a nurse practitioner, you find your practice, it's something that this is where you start your career. And I decided to do that all in 2016. And so, I just kept having this drive of, I just got to get this stuff done, kind of keep going, keep moving, keep doing all these things. And at the end, it was almost kind of like a letdown. And I was like, okay, well, what next? And then that's when I got my job offer for this clinic that is someone going into the healthcare field. You think, I want to help people. That's the main purpose for going into it. And so I was interviewing at different places, and there was this one clinic they were promoting that it was going to be a holistic care. You're going to work in team-based approaches, because in primary care, just traditional medicine, it's very much quick-paced. It's very much get the patient in, get the patient out. And I didn't really like that setting. And so when I was interviewing for this, it was called an innovative clinic. And so the idea was to kind of do a different approach to it. And I thought, I landed my dream job. First job out, I landed my dream job.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cool.
Yeah, it sounded great. I was thinking, this is it. This is the thing I went to do. And I started, and I quickly realized that was not reality. And the reality of that type of medicine is not quite where we're at in our medical world. And I hated it.
Oh, no. What do you do when you hate your dream job?
Yeah, that's what I did. I was like, oh my gosh, if this is as good as it gets in this kind of situation, I'm screwed. This is not going to be good for me. Like I said, about 6 months in, I just realized I was already burnt out. I was already trying to see too many patients. I wasn't really treating root causes, and I wasn't getting the quality time that I thought I was going to get with my patients. And I realized, this is miserable. And I was just absolutely miserable. And granted, when you're new, you don't know hardly anything. So the learning curve is huge.
Right.
You're in this clinic that is brand new and has its aches and pains and things like that. And my confidence level was just tanked because I thought I was doing this career that was my passion that I've been working for over 7 years, going to school for 7 years, coming out thinking this is it. And everything about it was just miserable. I just was not happy with the time, the quality, the situation I was in. And I panicked. I was desperate and I just didn't know where else to go. And I thought, this is it, this is my life. And I'm miserable, Granted, I'm married to a great guy. I had all the things that I thought would make me feel good and feel successful. And I just wasn't happy. And I was really self-destructive. I was not taking care of myself, all the things that don't help when you're in a toxic situation.
Right.
Yeah.
But that are normal because you just don't have the energy to do all of the things well.
Right.
Yeah. And no wonder your confidence was low and you probably weren't knowing how much you could trust yourself, because here you'd put so much time and energy and money into this career field. And now you're in it. And this is supposed to be as good as it gets. And it feels miserable and you are burnt out. And you're probably like, holy crap, I don't know myself at all. How did I lead myself here if this is so wrong?
That's exactly what it was. I felt like I couldn't trust any of my decisions after that. I started doubting everything, my friends, my family, my marriage, myself, just to the very core of who I was, thinking, how did I get so off course here? How could I have led myself down this path for so long and just be so wrong about it?
Yep.
It was, yeah, totally. It hit every aspect of my life.
Right. Well, because when your self-trust or your self-confidence takes a hit in one area, it's not isolated to just your career, but in every other way, you feel totally comfortable with yourself. You start, and this is the hardest part about being in a challenging situation in one area of your life, is that it will spiral. And all of a sudden, everything feels worse. And like you said, you're questioning everything. And it just makes it all feel so much heavier.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't believe how much it affected my marriage and my relationships. And, when people would ask, well, how's married life? Because we were still decently early married. And I would tell them it's good, ? And I would be like, but it is. But it was my job that was just so toxic to me and how I was responding to it and all the things that it trickled into every aspect of my life, 100%. And it really did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to now fast forward to how you're feeling now in contrast to that. And then we'll start to fill in some of the gaps, because I think just what I know about how you've been feeling lately, and even just our quick conversation before we hit record on this podcast, I know that pretty much none of what you just said probably feels relevant to you anymore.
It doesn't. It's so funny. I was trying to rack my brain how I felt, because I've changed so much.
Yeah, it probably feels like you're talking almost about a different person.
Yeah. Oh, yes. 100%. It's amazing how much, just who I am now and the person that I've become through just working really hard on who that is. It's just a complete change, and it's hard to nail down. I've had, life still happens and you still have to go to work and you're still doing the things that I had been doing, and things come up. But without the work that I've done and without working with you one-on-one, kind of going through who I am and building that confidence up, it's just, I'm a completely different person. The way that I respond to things, the way that I handle things, the way that I can handle trauma, handle stress is just completely different. Mm-hmm. I believe in myself. I believe in my decisions. I have so much intuition that I knew I had before, but I didn't trust it and didn't go with it. And the biggest part is I don't have that constant dialogue in my head of doubt, just that constant, you should do this, or why didn't you do this? Or I actually have silence in my brain now, which is really incredible for someone who had severe anxiety, severe depression. I was going to counseling. I was doing all the things, that was trying to get out of the situation. And now I look back and I go, I can't even go back to that place because I know too much now and I know myself.
Yep. No, it's true. It's true. Like once you know really and truly who you are and that you have a lot more agency in your life than you ever thought, you can't go back to not knowing that. So you're right. That previous version of you kind of is a different person because you can't become that person again. Like she was a very helpful time in your life, but she is no longer who you are in the current day. So I really want to talk about, because clearly, I mean, what you just described is 180 from what you described about just 2 years ago. I mean, 2016 was not that long ago, really.
No.
So I wanted to talk about what happened in between, right? Because that's a pretty big jump. And I think you've already started to touch on it a little bit, which is that inner dialogue that you have with yourself. You said that it used to be that your mind was full of doubt or criticism or worry or confusion. And now you have these pretty frequent moments of just calm and peace and quiet internally. And I want to talk about that because I think that's probably a big part of what shifted here. There was a lot of components in building that confidence and building that self-trust. But I think that this one is a pretty key one. So tell me a little bit about that relationship with we'll call it your inner critic, or the voice inside your head that tends to freak out and worry and be particularly critical of you and the world around you. What was that like, and how have you started to shift that inner dialogue?
So one of the calls that you and I had, it was one of the first calls we had, and it was going all in over our inner critic or our gremlin, or, and going over what that means. And the realization that is a protective mechanism for us was a huge eye opener for me, because it reminded me of a little kid just being very, very scared all the time. And I realized how almost kind of just mean I was to that little kid all the time, just saying, why are you having these thoughts? What are you doing? And then you kind of look at it at a 5-year-old who's scared, and that's your little person inside. That was you as a little 5-year-old that's trying to respond and protect. And the amount of compassion that I can have for a 5-year-old versus my own self or an adult who, quote unquote, should know this or that, I was able to say, oh, okay, this little inner dialogue is this thing that is trying to protect me. And so just the ability to have the compassion for that thing, who is you, who is me, who is all of us, it's your inner protection, and really actually loving that little voice and allowing them to have their moment, and then reassuring yourself, essentially. You might sound a little crazy at first, but reassuring yourself that that is a valid concern, that is a valid fear, but I know what I want. I know that going through this fear and overcoming this fear, this doubt, or this anxiety, or whatever it may be, is worth it in the end if you have your compass or your direction to help you get through. If you don't kind of know that direction or compass or that ultimate that you're trying to do, that little person can keep kind of driving the car, driving the direction. And that's where you get chaotic and scared and kind of hold back up from it. But the compassion that I had for that, it just totally changed how I responded to myself. Yeah. Which is literally most of the problems that I have, and I'm sure a lot of people have.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember that conversation where we were talking about the reframing that inner critical and fearful voice as a protector, and simultaneously that scared child who just thinks everything terrible is going to happen to you and is trying to protect you in advance from doing anything scary or anything out of the norm or anything where something bad could happen, which, by the way, is everything in life. So it pretty much wants you to just wrap you in bubble wrap and hole you up in the house and not let anything ever touch you.
And that's what I did, when I was going through that whole situation, as I was listening to that kid, and I would literally crawl into bed in my stupor of depression on my days off and allow that little kid or that voice to just run it, you know?
Yep.
And that conversation that we had, I mean, I remember I broke down crying because it was so emotional to be like, wow, that little kid is trying to protect me. And if I love, like any other little kid or other human, to love yourself in that sort of way is incredibly eye-opening and shouldn't be that hard. But I think it's a lot harder than a lot of people can even admit to.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, if you think about the way that we normally respond to our fear, which is to get angry, right?
Yep.
And try to shut it down or just try to push it aside and barrel through, or sometimes just letting it completely take over. That's like letting that terrified child drive the car, right? And you're like, I'll just sit in the back. It's fine. You've got this. And they're like, oh my God, I don't know how to drive.
Right. Exactly. And they're like getting excited. You're getting excited. You're trying to backseat drive, but they're not going to listen. Like, that's who's directing your life if you allow it to. And just truly realizing that fear and anger and insecurity is what was driving my life for a lot of my life really changed things. I mean, completely. That was probably one of the biggest realizations for me that has changed my world.
Yeah, I remember how emotional you were getting, thinking, man, I can't believe I've been talking to this scared inner child part of myself the way I've been talking to it.
Right.
Because I would never talk to a real life child like that, especially one that was scared. I would have so much compassion. I would have so much empathy, and I would be so loving and reassuring and soothing. And I have not been doing any of that for myself
at all. You know, it would almost be abusive if you were to switch out that human child for your inner child. And people do that all the time. We beat up on ourselves. And if you don't stop it, then that kid, that inner person, that inner voice is going to respond like anyone else would.
Yeah. Can you think of a moment where you felt that inner child come up and get scared and freak out, and you responded differently than you would have in the past? I don't want to put you on the spot for like a moment.
No, this is a daily thing. This is like a daily thing for me, because I'm telling you, this is not something that it just, okay, I had that realization, now I can shut it off. Right. Because it's still like a skill that you have to build. And so with my husband and I, in our relationships and in our encounters, when something like, so my husband, Stephen, would come home and say, what are we having for dinner? And I didn't plan anything. So immediately my inner critic previously would have gone to, I didn't plan for it. What kind of a wife am I? Why is he coming at me like this for this dinner and these situations and all this stuff? And then I would fire back at him and say, well, I didn't think about it. You know, what do you want to do? And it would just spiral into this fight where we would just inner critic back and forth to each other. And now instead, if it's something that really strikes a chord, I say, what I heard from you is that I didn't make dinner, or I didn't plan dinner. That makes me feel that I should have, and I feel guilty about that. And 9 out of 10 times, my husband goes, no, I just was going to brainstorm with you if you wanted to as to what we should do for dinner. If you've thought of something, we'll go with that thought. If you haven't thought of something, let's think of something together. And it just changed our relationship like so much. Just that ability to be like, okay, I'm feeling insecure about this comment. And that's not him. That's not just him. It's anyone at work, at my parents, anyone. I responded this way. Now let's stop and think why. And so it changed my marriage. Going into a new job, which I'm sure we'll kind of get into, is, I ended up quitting my old job and moving to a new job. And before I would not have been able to go into that situation without just constant fear that I'm not doing good at what I'm doing. And I should be as quick as the other people there. And I should have all these things figured out, when in reality, it's like, no one should have these things figured out. Even someone who's been doing it for years and years and years would still have questions about the same things I have questions about. And so, it's just made me so much more successful in that avenue. And so it's just this constant pause when I have those feelings of anger, insecurity, anxiety, and then I stop it, think through it, and then respond. And most of it is misinterpreted by me, by anyone. You think someone's coming at you for one reason or another, when really they're just asking you a factual question. It's a daily thing for me. It's definitely still like we were saying, a muscle that needs to be flexed, a skill that needs to keep being developed, because when you're tired, when you're worn out, when you have little sleep, not having eaten, that little critic is just like any 5-year-old who's going to throw a tantrum. And if you aren't aware of it, that's when it's going to explode again.
Yeah. Oh, I love that these are just small daily examples too, right? Because it's the accumulation of these things. And
yes.
What I'm hearing underneath of what you didn't use this word, but what I'm hearing is that your inner critic wants you to be perfect, right? There's like this perfectionism that comes up, right? If I were the perfect wife, I would have already not only had a plan for dinner, but would have it on the table when you walked in the room.
Oh gosh,
right?
Yes.
Or if I were the perfect employee, I would never have to ask a question, and I wouldn't have to learn anything new when I came in. I would just know everything. Even on day one of a new job, I would already know everything and be completely up to speed and at the same level of people who has been there for 10 years already. And when the perfectionism feels like, if I were perfect, then I wouldn't ever have to worry about disappointing people or getting hurt or getting rejected or failing. And so that's what your inner critic, that little child, thinks is the cure. Oh, just be the perfect version of yourself all the time. And then you'll never have to feel bad.
Correct. Yes. That's one of my main problems that I have to overcome. And I actually, not too long ago, because I still work through things, I still listen to podcasts. Literally, this is a daily, weekly thing that I'm still working on. But I redefined perfectionism, because for me, it was all those things. I had to be perfect all the time for all people. And that is a failing job to take on. You are not going to be successful. So you're always going to feel like a failure. Yes. And that's what I felt like. And so instead of perfectionism, meaning I need to be perfect, perfectionism is enjoying the ride, enjoying the moments as you keep moving forward. So it's trying to take away that perfect is something that you actually want, because perfectionism would be really boring. You wouldn't get all the ups and downs, the laughter, the flunders. You wouldn't get all those learning uncomfortable moments. And I wouldn't be here now. If I was born perfect, what a boring freaking world we'd be in, you know? And so it's
perfect.
It's enjoying.
is really boring and also really annoying.
Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. Well, and that's the thing, Perfect Therese didn't have that great of friends because they weren't really deep and they weren't flavorful. And now the friends that I have are the ones that I can be so straight and honest and authentic with. And we have so much fun, and, there's so much discussion and things that are so much deeper than what I was ever allowing anyone to see, because I was trying to be perfect for everyone in all situations.
Yep.
and a nice people pleaser, which segues into people pleasing.
I really want to get into people pleasing, because I know that's been a journey for you and for me. We have been on similar paths.
That's why I love talking about this with you.
So before we get into people pleasing, because I have a bunch of questions about that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to point out first that I'm hearing that part of this breaking of the perfectionism that you've experienced is being vulnerable. And what you said in the example with your husband, Stephen, right? When instead of just getting defensive or getting preemptively righteous or angry back or whatever, at a small comment, you'll say, look, I'm feeling a little bit guilty, or I'm feeling a little bit bad. Like maybe I'm not a good enough wife, or maybe I should have thought of this, or I'm even getting kind of mad at you, even though I know that's not what you meant. And when you just are really honest about this is what's going on in my head right now, then it allows the other, without being accusatory, right? Obviously that can just make their inner critic go haywire. But if you can just calmly share, this is what I'm feeling, and I know it's not really real, but I just have to get it out there because that's the experience I'm having in this moment. Or at work, asking a question and being like, you know what? I wish I already knew this answer, but I'm still trying to figure stuff out. Could you maybe show me that one more time? Or can you maybe point me in the right direction? Then it can feel really vulnerable when you share that, because you don't know what kind of response you're going to get. And that inner child thinks that people are going to laugh at you or get mad at you or think that you're stupid or whatever. But when you have those experiences and you are vulnerable, especially with people who do care about you, right? Obviously, your husband cares about you a lot. Yeah, I would hope that your coworkers want you to succeed, right? These people, they're not bullies for no reason. They want you to succeed. And so when you ask for help or when you share what's really going on for you, 99% of the time, they're just supportive. Or they'll
you get what you want.
Yes,
that's the other piece. That's the big piece, is that if you say what you want, you usually get what you want. There are some communication and compromise that comes from that. But if you let people know what you want, you usually get it in some form of way. And it's amazing how if you just literally tell people how you're feeling in a respectful, kind way, or sometimes in an authoritative way that needs to come across for whatever situation it is. But if you express your feelings and your vulnerability, telling them that I'm feeling this way, I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, it ends up being a positive encounter, you know?
Yep.
And again, that's still a work in progress for me. I still really have to keep practicing it. And first I started practicing it with my family members. So first, of course, it's going to be Stephen, my husband. So I first started practicing with him, and he just constantly comments on the way that I handle things, the way that I respond to things, the way I talk to other people is so much improved, so much more mature, so much more just positive, that he's impressed, because he's a very logical person and I'm a very emotionally responsive person. And so now with my emotions more under, I don't want to call it control, because it's more of my knowledge of my emotions and how I respond to things, because I like being an emotional responsive person. That makes me who I am. But it also helps me realize, like, I'm responding this way. I feel sad in this moment. I'm going to feel sad, and that's an okay response.
Right.
So
you can have your emotional responses without feeling at the effect of your emotions.
Exactly.
Where it just feels like they're completely steamrolling you and you have no control. That just feels exhausting and really hard. But when you can say, look, I'm going to feel sad right now, and I'm going to be okay with that. I give myself permission. You're back in control. So you can still have the emotional responses, because you're right. You're never going to not be an emotional person, right? Like,
exactly.
That's baked into who you are.
That is who I am. And that's what makes me special. Like, that's the thing that makes me really special. And, we've talked about that because I am in the medical field, how emotionally responsive is what makes me great at what I do. And it makes me different. It also causes a lot of angst and a lot of pushback because of the type of work I do is more logistical, more male focused and directed. And I'm not that way. And that's okay. And actually it makes me the person that I am and attracts the patients and the people that need to be attracted to me.
Yes. It's actually much more in line with true healing, because healing is not just a physical thing. It's very
Correct.
much a holistic experience. And that's what you thought you were getting into in that first job.
I was really duped. Yes, I was.
Okay. I definitely want to get into this piece about people pleasing. I love what you said before, which was when you are vulnerable and you share what you really want, you often get it. But if you are letting your people pleasing get in the way, you will never even ask for what you want.
No.
Because you're so concerned with what everyone else wants or what they want you to be for them that you may not even know what you want, much less be able to ask for it. So I know that I know on a personal level that people pleasing is a possibly lifelong journey.
Oh gosh, yes.
So I'm not
recovering people pleaser.
Right. Yeah, we are in recovery. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say, well, now that you've completely cured that, but I do know that you've done a lot of work in this arena.
Oh my
and I
gosh.
want to hear a little bit about how your people pleasing, maybe for a while, stifled you from even knowing what you want. I remember at one point you were saying, I know I must have opinions and thoughts and feedback about certain things, but sometimes I'm not even sure what that is. So I don't know how to speak up because the people pleaser was just so loud. And I want to hear a little bit about how that was affecting all areas of your life. And then we'll get into what are some of the things that have helped you, not necessarily silence the people pleaser, but quiet it quite a bit.
Right. So I didn't realize that people pleasing was really driving a lot of the things I was saying yes to. So the going out with friends, doing the things that I wanted, that I thought I wanted to do, it was more because out of guilt, out of wanting to please the other person is the reason why I was doing these things. And so I think I really didn't even see the people pleaser thing until I started to get into a more, so with my profession, you have to have an opinion about things. People come in and ask you, what's your opinion on vaccines? What's your opinion on this medication, that medication, this therapy, that therapy? And all my life, I've always been the peacekeeper, I see all sides of the coin. I can see where you're coming from. I can see those things. And then when someone would point blank ask me what I thought, I would say, well, I can see all sides. I can get that, And so in that sense, I wasn't taking a stance on anything. And if you don't take a stance on anything, then you're going to get bulldozed. Things, I would say bad things end up happening because you just go with the flow. You do what other people want. You don't have any sort of ground to stand on. And that went as simple as, where do you want to go to eat? What do you want to do this weekend? And then in a people pleaser's world, you think, I'm going to please this person, this group of people. I'm going to do what they want so that in turn, they will try to please me in response. Right. They will try to meet my needs. But that's not the context. That's not the signature that people give you when you do something nice for them. And so in a people pleaser's mind, in my mind, it was, I do this for you, I should get this in return. So then I was constantly disappointed on top of that. Mm-hmm. So you're just kind of following this weird second conversation that's not really even happening, thinking that you'll get this positive response when most of the time, either you're unhappy with the result, you're not happy doing the things that you committed to, and you're resentful to the people that you committed to and are trying to please anyway. So then it's this negative feedback that actually ends up being worse and worse and worse, because then you allow guilt and other things to just kind of pile on top of each other.
Yeah, as you're talking through this, I'm just thinking, how funny is it that people pleasing is supposed to make everyone around you happier, right? And
right.
like you called yourself the peacekeeper, right? That's what a lot of people pleasers would call themselves as well. They would identify as a peacekeeper because you think that I'm doing all these things to make everyone else happy. But first of all, you're not making yourself happy because you're not even considering what you want in the situation. Right. And you're also putting yourself in a position to resent other people because unless we're all people pleasers, then they're not going to be spending as much effort trying to please you as you are them. And they shouldn't, right? Like that's not their responsibility.
Correct. Yep.
And so you're not pleased. You are resentful of other people, which is going to impact your relationship with them. And so you're not going to have as positive of a relationship with them. And you're not going to want to keep, doing things for them. It's going to deteriorate the relationship. And then no one is happy. So the point was trying to make everyone happy with you and with the situation. And it turns out that everything just kind of falls apart when that's your focus.
Always.
So it's a negative feedback loop that is framed in what feels like positive packaging. Right.
And you're doing it from a kind, nice, the word nice person now is the last thing that I want to be called because I don't want to be a nice person. I want to be a passionate person. I want to be a loving person. I want to be all those things. But a nice person is so placid and you end up being the person that just kind of gets looked by or not really noticed other than they're the nice person. And I want to live so much more authentically and alive that you can't be the nice person all the time.
Right.
And actually not being the nice person has, again, kind of cropped off all the extra stuff that I really didn't even like doing anyway. I cut out the things that didn't make me happy anyway. And now I don't even think about trying to please other people for the most part. I mean, it's gotten to the point where even when I have a difficult patient, I can tell them I won't do X, Y, or Z, and I can stand by that. Whereas before, the people pleaser would be like, well, how can I make this work for them? And how can I ease it to the point where they get what they want? But I also kind of stood my ground. And it's like, no, if that's not something I agree with, I close that boundary off. And I make it very apparent that that is how I practice and this is how I'm going to do things. And that, that doesn't always make people happy. But I feel so much better internally about my decisions instead of saying yes when I really should have said no.
Yeah. No, I think those are some of the most important people-pleasing tools to break through and overcome that is setting boundaries, like you just said. And standing up for yourself. And that is really hard to most people pleasers.
Yep. It's really, really hard.
Because it feels like you're being selfish.
Yep. Exactly.
So how have you been able to handle that inner dialogue when you are setting these boundaries and you are advocating for yourself and speaking up for yourself and saying no more often? And there's that people pleaser in the back of your mind saying, yeah, but are you being selfish? How have you been responding to that when that comes up?
So the big piece was the deep work that I did before, understanding that my decisions are very thoughtful. I am doing it for the right reasons so that when I say no, it's because I've processed it. So I know who I am and what my morals are and what my values are. So that when I say no, I can stand behind it and I have the confidence to do so. But that came from deciding what my ethics are, what my morals are, what my core values are, and what I stand by. And so then for that one, it did negate, it took away a lot of the guilt and the doubt because now I know who I am and what I am okay with. So then I don't have that guilt as much.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure there's moments, but for the most part, like looking back over the last couple months, when I say no, it's because there's a reason behind it because I know who I am and what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with.
Well, yeah, it sounds like what you believe now is that there's always a good intention.
Yes.
You trust your intention. So even if in the moment, the action looks quote unquote selfish. The intention is, I don't want to get to a place where I'm burnt out and resentful, and that's going to impact this relationship.
Right.
Or I don't want to take on so much that I can't do a good job of this. And I think this deserves being done well. And I don't think I don't have the capacity for that right now.
Right.
So the intention is actually pure.
Yes.
Even if
exactly.
Yeah, even if you have to say no in the moment.
And most of the time when I have to say no, it's for the patient's safety, it's for my sanity, it's so that I can be a better person later on, or I can serve that person in the best way that I can versus what they wanted out of me.
Right. It's almost like not always giving them what they want in the moment, but giving them what they need in the long run.
Exactly. And the confidence behind that and believing in myself, it came once I started doing those boundaries. And like I said, it was still a practice. It was still a skill that I would try this new boundary out and see how someone responded. And then I kept getting positive response from those boundaries. And so it's getting over the fear of trying those boundaries. Like I said, first with trusted family and friends. And now I can do it in a clinical setting with high stakes. These are high stakes situations. This is sometimes life and death, sometimes the difference between an explosive patient and someone that would walk away with what they wanted, but without trying it and developing it, I wouldn't have gotten to this point either.
Yeah.
So now it's a lot more knee jerk, but that, it's only been 4 months that I've been practicing this. So it's taken some time, but it's also, you can get there if you keep practicing it.
Yes. This is maybe a tangent type question, but I just can't help thinking, what, if any, correlation do you feel that there is between helping professions like the medical world, but there's a lot of professions where the goal is to help others improve their lives in some way, and people pleasing? I feel like there's a connection there somehow.
Oh my gosh. That's what really got me with when I accomplished everything. So when I was growing up as a young girl, it was always, you want to help others. You want to find a profession that you can support yourself, that makes good money, those types of things. And then I did all those things that people told you that you should do. And I got to the end, and the medical profession and the healthcare, that's what they are based on, is you're helping people, you're serving others. But people pleasing and serving others get convoluted. And so in the medical world, we're stuck between being pushed to actually try to serve and people please while you're healing. And people pleasing isn't always, like I'm saying, with these patients who want antibiotic when they don't need the antibiotic. So I could either give it to them, even if they didn't really need it, which would be considered, one, people pleasing, and two, giving the patient what they needed, or having the harder conversation and setting the boundaries and saying, this is a virus. Your body is very capable of taking care of this and getting you through that. Now, does that always make a patient happy? Does that please the patient? Not necessarily, And so that's where the healthcare, you have to almost design for people pleasers to kind of come into, but then you have to find that boundary between the two. That is not easy, easy, especially with the way that, we're pushed to get patient satisfaction and do these things so that patients are happy with your service. And so you have to walk this tightrope that is very difficult, especially when you're a people pleaser.
I know. I'm just imagining like the healthcare world and probably social working and teaching and all of these traditional helping professions being full of burnt out people pleasers.
Oh, yes.
And yet it's those are also perfect career paths in terms of giving them ample opportunities to overcome it. Because every single day, every single patient, every single student, whoever that you're working with and trying to help, to keep in mind, yes, I want to help you, but not to the point that it's at my own expense, or not to the point that I'm just giving you a quick fix in the moment, because that would just make you happy right now.
Or bending my ethics, or bending my morals.
Yes.
To make you happy. Because that's a reality. That's a reality, because if you don't meet their needs in the way that they perceive as their needs, they're not going to be happy with you. And then you get the patient complaint, you get the things that come back and kind of, they reiterate your people-pleasing tendencies. And so you really have to be like, oh, wait a second. Yep. No, I made this decision for a very specific reason, even if they're not happy with me and my quote unquote scores go down. Getting over that's a whole nother ballgame of people pleasing, so you're not only trying to please your patients, but you're also trying to please your bosses, the scorecard that they run on you for all the different things that you are graded on. So in a perfect storm, all these people pleasers who really are there to do good are on top of it, just so convoluted, and to get out of people pleasing in that kind of setting is very difficult.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to people please in that situation.
You really have to get clear on your boundaries.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So a couple more questions. I really want to hear a little bit more about this boundary setting, because I think that's a huge part of all of this. So what has been particularly challenging about setting, maybe not just setting, but sticking to boundaries? And also what's been rewarding about it? So a big thing that, I used to say yes to all things. Anyone who asked me anything, I would say yes to, because that's what you do. Someone wants to spend time with you, you should want to spend time with them. But I realized that if I did that too many times in a row, that I would burn myself out, in return be resentful, and then be unhappy and difficult to be around the people who I actually wanted to be around. And so I started to kind of count the things I was doing in a week and then try to subtract it by one. Mm-hmm. And so every time that I would want to commit to something, because in the moment, I sometimes wanted to, I wanted to be there. And then once the day came around, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. I had already done 2 other events, and now I'm doing this 3rd one, and I'm burnt out. And then I feel guilty about canceling, because I don't like doing that to people anyway. And so then I got to the point where I would that last invitation, I would always say no to, even if I wanted to go, so that I wouldn't be overwhelmed and burnt out. And that really changed how I was able to show up to the things I wanted to show up to, and then give myself the time to recover, because I really thought I was an extrovert all these years. I thought I liked to be around people and they gave me energy. And I realized quickly that that's not the case. I like to be around people, but I need time for myself. And I allow that time now. So whereas before, taking a bath and reading on my day off, I would have felt guilty about doing and never would have even considered doing it. Now I make sure I do that several times a week, because it re-energizes me. Yeah. And so really scaling back on how many things I'm saying yes to very intentionally, so that when I'm doing the things I say yes to, I'm actually there in full force, very engaged and very excited about being there. So it's quality over quantity. That is my life quote now, is if it's quality, then I do it. If it's quantity and I'm doing it because of the wrong reasons, I say no to it. Oh, yes. That's my life motto too. I'm so on board. Yeah. So it sounds like first you have to get clear on what do I need, right? So it might, to someone who's just looking at your life logically, or even a previous version of you that was much more concerned with productivity and doing all the things, taking a bath might have seemed frivolous. Or taking a day off and just getting a massage might have seemed frivolous. But now there's this recognition that in order to feel like the healthiest, happiest, best version of myself, these are the things I need. And that includes a lot of downtime. Then you get to create boundaries around those things and treat them like needs, not wants, because they truly are they truly are needs. If what you want is to be a really fulfilled, passionate, alive, healthy human.
Right. And kind of focusing in on what are those things. And the fun part about it was getting to try out the things that I tend to like, but wouldn't allow myself to do because they weren't productive. So instead of going on a run, now I take walks because I enjoy doing that. Whereas before I would have thought even just walking was frivolous. It was a waste of time when I could go run and burn more calories, do more things, get my dog out for a longer run. And then I started to play around with things and be like, okay, I don't feel like running today, but it's really pretty out and I wouldn't mind going on a walk. So I did those things. And then I realized, oh, I really enjoyed that because I could listen to my podcast while I'm doing this. And I was getting, the exercise that I needed as well as rejuvenating myself instead of depleting myself. And so I allowed myself to just try these things. I tried to do one of those coloring books. I didn't like doing it. I tried that. I tried journaling and I really enjoy journaling now. And I tried taking a bath and I realized how much I love reading. And so I really make a ton of time to do that. And the interesting thing is I used to really love naps, but because I'm not so tired anymore, I don't need them because I'm actually rejuvenating myself in other ways and allowing myself to do that to where I don't need naps and sleeping in and the extra sleep from it either.
Isn't it wild how much we all need the reminder to just do some things for the joy of it?
Yes.
Right? We get stuck in this loop of productivity and everything has to get me further in some way or has to be logical or productive, or it feeds into that perfectionist belief, right?
Yes.
I have to be perfect.
Yes.
I have to do all the things all the time. And we forget that sometimes you can just do things for the pure joy of it. You could just go for a walk and not even put your Fitbit on and see how many calories.
Exactly.
Maybe you just are enjoying the sunshine on your skin for 20 minutes.
Actually, I've gotten to the point where I live most of my life that way now. I do things that I enjoy because life's too damn short not to.
Yes.
Yes. It's too precious to be miserable. And that was what I started to realize is how much fun I was having doing the things that I wanted to do. And whatever that may be, if that's dancing, if that's drawing, who cares what anyone else thinks about it? It's the thing that makes you tick and makes you feel alive and lights you up. So do more of that.
Yes. Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That feels like a really good place for us to wrap up because that's like the end message here. It's like, do things for the joy.
Yes. And then find out what it is and keep doing it.
Yes. Yes. So as we are wrapping up, I just want to ask if there's anything that you want to share with people who might be feeling the way you felt back in 2016. And I'm not asking you to give them all the answers or anything. I think you've already given them a lot of ideas and suggestions, but maybe just a little bit of reassurance that as someone who was there not that long ago and who feels like they're in a totally different state, what do you want to share to just convince them that this won't last forever?
Just really start reaching out for the help, start looking things up, start. I guess that's what I keep saying is start moving in the direction to get the help that you need or to start enjoying the things that make you happy. Just start doing those things a little bit more. And just over time, it accumulates. It's like that snowball where you just start moving forward and eventually you look around and just smile or tear up at how happy you are. And it really is a daily thing. It's just starting, just making that first move to get the ball rolling, because in the end, it's so worth it.
And it doesn't have to be a big, huge step either. What you're saying is just starting in the smallest way is the first step, and it will build momentum.
Yes. And knowing that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
There is hope. There is a bigger reason, and you can get through, and you will. It's just having to keep trudging forward to get there.
Well, I want to thank you because I believe and I hope that even just hearing this conversation for some people will be the light at the end of the tunnel. To have proof that no matter how confused or self-doubting or stuck you're feeling, it won't last forever. And you're a perfect example, right? In a pretty relatively short amount of time, given the whole range of your lifetime, you have made huge, huge strides. And it began with getting started, like you just said. So thank you for sharing your journey a bit. And I think you have inspired a lot of people and given a lot of hope and some good ways of shifting the inner stuff so that the outer stuff can fall into place more easily. So thank you so much for your time and your honesty and for being here with us today.
And I want to thank you for helping me through that, without someone to unbiasedly work through these things, it would have taken me years. Now, with my personality, would I have gotten there? I would like to believe that, but it would have taken me a lot longer. And I still turn to you guys for your podcasts. I still listen to, all the things that you guys have to say, which is touching on life skills that are just not taught to anyone. And so reaching out and even just starting to listen to podcasts like these is really a good first start. And then it's weird how the universe just kind of trickles forward. And now you get to be on a podcast like this.
It's so true. It's just that baby step. And maybe this is you starting. You know what I mean? Maybe this for some people, right. Even just hearing this is the start. So thank you again. I'm honored to have been part of your journey and to just have seen a lot of that transformation. It's a really, really cool experience as a coach. So thank you for reaching out for help and for asking and for letting me in. And thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I haven't heard yet, but I will listen when it comes out, I am told that you talked a lot about people pleasing and getting over your need to get validation from other people.
Very much.
So we wanted to remind you that we have an episode about people pleasing that you should really listen to if you haven't. It's called How to Overcome the Disease to Please, or something like that. You'll find it. We'll also link to it in the episode description, so there's no way you can miss it. It's back from a few months ago. I think it was June or late May.
That sounds right.
Something like that. We've done so many now that I'm forgetting when we did them.
I know.
But this was our literally #1 most popular episode of ever. It has sometimes double the downloads of more recent episodes. And it just hangs out there at #1. Like nothing has unseated it. Because apparently this is the most common affliction that everyone is suffering from.
Yep. And after we stopped the recording, Terece told me that the book, The Disease to Please, which is what we reference a lot in that podcast
by
episode.
Dr. Harriet Breaker,
yes.
if I am not mistaken.
She said that was an absolute life changer.
Wow.
For her. That was a really big part of her journey. And so reading that book and hearing our podcast was monumental in that inner shift for her because people pleasing was so strong for her. So she wanted to make sure that you guys know about the book. So I'll put the link for that book and the podcast episode in the episode description.
Cool. And that's it. We're not going to tell you anything else. Aren't you excited? We're not like hitting over the head with anything.
Nope. Just a follow-up podcast if you're curious.
That's all. And we will see you on Tuesday with, I believe, a new blog from Kristen.
From me.
Okay.
Bye.